She saved a frozen baby in a blizzard, never knowing it was the millionaire's lost daughter. The blizzard arrived without mercy, as if God himself had decided Wyoming Territory needed erasing from the map. Grace Sullivan pressed her thin body against the rock face, her 12-year-old frame shaking not just from cold, but from the bone-deep exhaustion of 3 days without food. The stolen horse had died yesterday, collapsing in the snow, with a wheeze that sounded too much like her mother's last breath 5 years ago. She shouldn't have run from the orphanage, but Mrs. Hartley's switch had finally broken skin one too many times, and the basement punishment room still haunted her dreams. Better to die free in a blizzard than live caged in cruelty. The wind screamed through the canyon, and Grace closed her eyes, ready to join her father. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm, a cry high and desperate, barely audible above the howling wind. A baby. Grace forced her frozen limbs to move, following the sound through snow that reached her knees. Her hands, wrapped in torn fabric from her dress, were so numb she couldn't feel them anymore. The cry came again, weaker this time, from behind an overturned wagon 30 yards ahead. The scene that greeted her was carnage. Two bodies, a man and woman, lay twisted in unnatural positions, their blood already frozen into red crystal patterns on the snow. The man clutched a rifle, its barrel pointing at nothing. The woman's arms were stretched towards something beneath the wagon. Grace crawled under the splintered wood and found her a baby, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in an expensive fur blanket that had kept her alive but barely. The infant's lips were blue, her cries now just whimpers. Pinned to the blanket was an envelope sealed with red wax, bearing an elaborate B. Without thinking, Grace pulled the baby against her chest, opening her own thin coat to share what little warmth she had. The infant's weight was nothing like holding a bird, but her eyes, when they fluttered open, were the deepest brown Grace had ever seen, with gold flecks that caught even the dim stormlight. "Shh, little one," Grace whispered through chattering teeth. "I've got you. We're going to be okay." It was a lie. They were both going to die here. But Grace had learned that sometimes lies were the only comfort available in a harsh world. She tucked the envelope inside her dress without reading it and began walking again. The baby clutched against her chest, looking for any shelter that might buy them a few more hours. The cave appeared like a miracle, a black mouth in the white world, barely visible through the driving snow. Grace stumbled inside her legs, finally giving out 10 feet from the entrance. She crawled the rest of the way, dragging the baby with her until they were out of the wind's reach. The cave was shallow but dry. Grace found enough dead brush near the entrance to start a small fire, using the matches she'd stolen from the orphanage, her one smart theft. The smoke made her cough, but warmth was worth suffocation. She examined the baby by firelight. A girl well-fed despite her current state, wearing clothes that cost more than Grace had seen in her lifetime. The blanket alone, with its silver fox fur, would fetch enough money to eat for a year. But it was keeping the baby warm, so Grace just pulled it tighter. The infant's eyes opened again, fixing on Grace with an intensity that seemed impossible for one so young. She didn't cry anymore, just stared, as if recognizing something in Grace's face. "You hungry little one?" Grace asked, though she had nothing to give. The baby gurgled, one tiny hand escaping the blanket to grasp Grace's finger with surprising strength. That's when Grace saw it, a birthmark on the baby's wrist, shaped like a crescent moon. The sight of it triggered something in Grace's memory, hazy and distant. Her mother, delirious with fever, talking about a baby with a moon mark, a baby who had to be hidden, a baby who... The memory slipped away like smoke. Grace's past before age 7 was mostly darkness, punctuated by fragments that made no sense. She remembered gardens and a woman singing in Chinese, remembered a man with kind eyes teaching her to read. Remembered running through halls that echoed, but those couldn't be her memories. She was nobody, from nowhere with nothing. The baby started to cry again, hungry now. Grace did the only thing she could, she sang. It was a lullaby she didn't remember learning in a language she didn't speak, but the words came anyway. Yue guangxia de xiao bao bao. Little baby under the moonlight. The infant immediately calmed, her eyes widening as if she recognized the song. That was impossible, of course. Just like it was impossible that Grace knew this song, or that the baby's birthmark made her heart race with something between fear and recognition. The fire was dying. Grace added the last of the brush, knowing it wouldn't last the night. Outside, the blizzard raged on, sealing them in their temporary tomb. She pulled out the envelope, breaking the wax seal with numb fingers. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper and a photograph. The letter was brief. "Samuel, your granddaughter lives." Eleanor tried to run with her, tried to protect her from those who would use her against you. We failed, I'm sorry. The truth about Sarah is with Dr. Hayes. Trust no one else. The photograph showed a beautiful woman holding a baby, and behind them a man whose face had been burned out of the image with what looked like acid. But Grace didn't need to see his face. She knew those shoulders, that posture, that particular way of standing with one foot slightly forward. She knew because she stood the same way. The baby whimpered, pulling Grace from her shock. She tucked the letter away and gathered the infant closer, their shared warmth, the only thing keeping death at bay. Looks like we're both more than we seem. A little one, Grace whispered. Question is, what do we do about it? Samuel Blackwood stood at the window of his mansion, watching the blizzard erase the world. Somewhere out there, his men were dying in the search for a baby they didn't even know was his blood. He'd told them it was a valuable worker's child, offered enough gold to make them brave the storm. 3 hadn't returned. Sir, his foreman, Tom Bradley, entered without knocking a liberty, only he was allowed. Jake Morrison just rode in. He's got news. Samuel turned. Jake Morrison was the best tracker in 3 territories. A man who'd once been paid to kill Samuel, but had switched sides when he learned the truth about his employer. That was 8 years ago. Jake had been hunting for him ever since. Send him in. Jake entered like a wolf, all contained violence and watchful eyes. Ice clung to his beard and his left arm hung awkwardly, recently wounded from the look of it. Found the wagon, Jake said without preamble. The Changs are dead. Ambush from the look of it. Samuel's hands clenched. Marcus and Eleanor Chang had been protecting his granddaughter for 6 months, moving her from safe house to safe house while Samuel tried to eliminate the threat. Now, the baby, gone but not taken to track, shows someone crawled under the wagon then walked away. Small footprints. A child maybe. A child in this storm. Children survive things that would kill grown men sometimes. Jake accepted the whiskey Tom offered, downing it in one swallow. There's more. Found another set of tracks near Skeleton Ridge. A girl about 12 traveling alone. Her horse died about a mile from the wagon. You think she has the baby? Timeline fits. She was heading toward the old mining settlements. There are caves there, shelter. Samuel was already reaching for his coat. We go now. Sir, Tom protested, the storm has my granddaughter in it. Samuel's voice could have frozen flame. We go now. As they prepared to leave, Samuel thought about Sarah, his daughter dead these 12 years. She'd been 12 when she died, or when he thought she died. The fire that took her and her mother had been ruled an accident, but Samuel had never believed it. Too convenient, happening just when his business rivals needed him distracted. The baby little Emma was all he had left of his family. His son James had died in the war, his wife Margaret of grief shortly after. Sarah had been his last light, and when she died. But then 6 months ago, Dr. Hayes had come to him with an impossible truth. Sarah might have survived the fire. The body they'd buried had been too badly burned to identify properly. And there had been rumors, whispers of a girl matching Sarah's description seen with traveling Chinese merchants the week after the fire. If Sarah lived, she'd be 24 now. Emma was Sarah's daughter, he was certain of it. The birthmark, the age, the way those who wanted to hurt him had suddenly become interested in a random baby. Ready, sir, Jake said, loaded down with supplies. They rode into the white hell, 3 men against nature's fury. Samuel didn't pray, hadn't since Margaret died, but he made a bargain with whatever listened. Save the child and I'll give everything else up. The money, the power, the endless need for vengeance. Just save her. The Oriental Paradise stood like a lighthouse in the storm, the only building in Redemption Falls with lights still burning. Maggie Chen watched from her window as 3 riders materialized from the blizzard, one of them the unmistakable bulk of Samuel Blackwood. He's here, she said in Mandarin to the elderly man sitting by her fire. Dr. William Hayes looked up from his medical journal, his face grave. Then it's time. I'm not ready. You've had 12 years to be ready. Maggie touched the burn scars on her neck, usually hidden by high collars. 12 years since the fire. 12 years since her father had saved a little girl and given her a new name, a new life, a new identity as his daughter. 12 years of hiding in plain sight. She was Sarah Blackwood, and the man riding toward her inn was her father who thought her dead. What if he doesn't believe me? He will. I've made sure of it. Mr. Hayes stood, his old bones creaking. But first we need to make sure the baby survives. Your daughter needs you, Sarah. Maggie, she corrected. Sarah died in that fire. I'm Maggie Chen, owner of the Oriental Paradise, nobody special. You're his daughter, that baby's mother. Stop hiding. I'm protecting him. You don't know what the syndicate will do if they learn I'm alive. They'll use me against him, use Emma. A crash from below cut her off. The front door had been forced open. Boots on stairs, heavy and urgent. Maggie quickly pulled her hair over her scars and schooled her face into the calm mask of a simple innkeeper. Samuel Blackwood burst through her door like a force of nature, snow swirling around him. His eyes, so like her own, swept the room and dismissed her in an instant, focusing on Dr. Hayes. "William, we need your help. There's a child out there with a baby." "I know," Dr. Hayes said. "I've already sent my men to the caves. They'll search systematically." "How did you—" "I've been tracking the same situation you have, Samuel. The Changs were my friends too." Samuel's shoulders sagged slightly. Maggie saw how much older he looked, how grief had carved deep lines into his face. She wanted to run to him, to collapse in his arms and cry "Papa," like she had as a child. Instead, she poured tea with steady hands. "Mr. Blackwood," she said in accented English, an accent she'd carefully cultivated to sound nothing like her mother's southern drawl or her father's Boston pronunciation. "You need warmth and food. The storm won't break for hours." He looked at her, then really looked, and for a moment she thought he saw through her disguise. But then Jake Morrison entered, and the moment passed. "Cave system's extensive," Jake reported. "Could take days to search properly." "We don't have days." "No," Maggie said quietly, "we don't." They all turned to her. She kept her eyes down, playing the submissive innkeeper. "There's a girl who comes to town sometimes, about 12, maybe 13. Red hair, green eyes, orphanage runaway. She knows those caves better than anyone." "You've seen her," Samuel leaned forward urgently. "She trades herbs for food sometimes, knows the mountain like she was born to it." It was true. Grace Sullivan did come to town, did trade with Maggie. What Maggie hadn't told anyone was that Grace looked exactly like her childhood friend, Catherine, the daughter of her mother's maid. Catherine, who had died in the fire meant for Sarah. Catherine, whose daughter would be about 12 now, if she'd lived. But that was impossible. Just like Sarah Blackwood surviving was impossible. "We need to find her," Samuel said. "I might know where she shelters," Maggie offered. "There's a particular cave deeper than the others. She mentioned it once, said it was where desperate things went to survive or die." Jake was already moving. "I'll need specifics." Maggie drew them a map, her hands steady even as her heart raced. She was sending them toward Grace, toward Emma, toward a collision of past and present that could destroy everything she'd built. Dr. Hayes watched her with knowing eyes. He'd been the one to save her from the fire, the one to help her father create her new identity. He knew all her secrets, and now she could see in his face he thought it was time to end them. "I'll come with you," Maggie said suddenly. "No," Samuel's response was automatic. "Too dangerous. I know those caves, and if there's an injured child, you'll need someone who speaks their language. That girl, she responds better to women." It was a risk. The more time she spent with her father, the more likely he'd recognize something, a gesture, a turn of phrase, anything that survived from the child she'd been. "She's right," Dr. Hayes said. "And Maggie has medical training. I taught her myself." Another truth. Dr. Hayes had taught her everything medicine languages, how to hide in plain sight. He'd been more of a father to her than Samuel in these 12 years, though it broke her heart to think it. Samuel studied her for a long moment. "You'd risk your life for strangers." "No one's a stranger in a storm like this. We're all just trying to survive." He nodded slowly. "Get ready. We leave in 10 minutes. As Maggie prepared, wrapping herself in furs and checking her medical supplies, she thought about Emma. Her daughter, born of a shameful night she barely remembered, raised by others, while Maggie hid. The Changs had been good people. She'd chosen them herself secretly, through Dr. Hayes. Now Emma was out there with Grace Sullivan, two lost girls in a frozen world. And Maggie was about to risk everything to save them. She touched the burn scars one more time. These marks had saved her life once the fire had disfigured her enough that no one looked for Sarah Blackwood in Maggie Chen's face. But they'd also imprisoned her, kept her from her father, from her daughter, from any life beyond the carefully constructed lie. "Ready?" Jake Morrison stood in her doorway. "Yes," Maggie said, and meant it. Ready to save the children. Ready to face her father. Ready perhaps to stop hiding. The storm waited for no one's emotional preparations. They rode out into its fury, and Maggie felt like she was riding toward destiny or disaster. In a blizzard, they often looked the same. Grace woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving a world wrapped in white death. The baby Emma, she'd decided to call her, though she didn't know why, still breathed against her chest, but barely. They needed food, warmth, help. The fire had died hours ago. Grace's fingers were white at the tips, frostbite setting in. She might lose them, but that was tomorrow's problem. Today's problem was survival. She heard them before she saw them. Horses struggling through deep snow, voices calling out. Grace's first instinct was to hide. Years of running had taught her that voices usually meant danger. But Emma's breathing was getting shallower, and Grace knew they were both past the point of managing alone. "Here," she called, her voice cracking from cold and disuse. "We're here." The voices grew closer, urgent now. The first person through the cave mouth was a woman in expensive furs, Chinese features mixed with something else. Behind her, a man built like a mountain and another who moved like a predator. But it was the third man who made Grace's heart stop. She'd seen him in town, heard the whispers. Samuel Blackwood, the richest man in 3 territories, the man who owned half of Wyoming. The man whose eyes looked exactly like the ones she saw in her broken mirror. "Dear God," the woman breathed, rushing forward. "Give her to me, I have medical training." Grace tried to resist, but her arms wouldn't work properly. The woman Maggie, she heard someone call her, took Emma with practiced ease, immediately checking her breathing, her pulse, her temperature. "She's alive," Maggie announced. "Barely, but alive. The girl saved her." Samuel Blackwood knelt beside Grace, his massive frame somehow gentle. "You're a hero, child. You saved her." Is she yours?" Grace asked through chattering teeth. Something flickered in his eyes. "Yes, she's my blood." Grace fumbled inside her dress, pulling out the letter with numb fingers. This was with her. Samuel read it, his face changing from confusion to shock to something Grace couldn't identify. He looked at Maggie, who was warming Emma by the rebuilt fire. "My God," he whispered, "it's true." "What's true?" Jake Morrison asked. But Samuel wasn't listening. He was staring at Grace with an intensity that made her want to run. "What's your name, child?" Grace Sullivan." "Your parents?" "Dead. Mother died 5 years ago. Never knew my father." "Your mother's name?" Catherine Sullivan." Maggie made a sound, sharp pained. Everyone turned to her, but she was focused on Emma, avoiding their eyes. "Catherine Sullivan," Samuel repeated slowly. "Red hair, green eyes, worked as a lady's maid." Grace nodded, confused. "You knew her?" "She worked for my wife. Disappeared the night of the fire that killed my daughter." His voice was strange, hollow. "They found a body in her room. We thought she died trying to save Sarah." "My mother never mentioned any of that," Grace said. But even as she spoke, she remembered her mother's fevered rambling. "Should have been me. Should have saved her, the moon baby, the switch. God forgive me." Dr. Hayes, who'd arrived with the second search party, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should get everyone back to town. These children need proper medical attention." But Samuel wasn't done. He pulled something from his pocket, a photograph yellowed with age. "Have you seen this girl before?" Grace looked at the picture. It showed a young girl about 12 with dark hair and serious eyes. She wore a dress that probably cost more than most people's houses. But it was the birthmark on her wrist that made Grace gasp, a crescent moon identical to Emma's. That's the same mark. The baby has it." "Yes," Samuel said intently, "because this is her mother, my daughter Sarah, who supposedly died 12 years ago." "Samuel," Dr. Hayes warned, "this isn't the time." "When is the time, William?" "Oh, when..." Samuel's control cracked. 12 years I've mourned her. 12 years I've believed she was dead. And now this baby appears with her birthmark and this girl who looks exactly like..." He stopped, staring at Grace with new eyes. "Dear God, Catherine didn't die in the fire. She ran, she took..." "Stop." Maggie's voice cut through his revelation like a blade. She stood slowly, Emma secure in her arms. "Just stop." Everyone turned to her. She looked different somehow, taller, more commanding. The submissive innkeeper was gone. "The girl needs medical attention. The baby needs warmth and food. Everything else can wait." "You don't understand," Samuel started. "I understand perfectly." Maggie's voice carried an authority that made even Jake Morrison straighten. "I understand that you're about to destroy a child's entire world based on speculation and old photographs. I understand that whatever truth you think you've discovered can wait until these children are safe." She looked directly at Grace then, and Grace saw something in her eyes, recognition, warning, protection. "We're leaving. Now." The ride back to Redemption Falls was a blur for Grace. Bundled in furs on Samuel Blackwood's horse, held secure by his massive arms, she drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she heard fragments of conversation. "Can't be coincidence. Hayes knew all along. The birthmark proves." But mostly she focused on staying awake, on watching Maggie Chen ride ahead with Emma wrapped against her chest. There was something about the way Maggie held the baby, desperate and tender at once, that made Grace's chest ache. The Oriental paradise had never looked more welcoming. Maggie took charge, immediately ordering hot water, blankets, food. She settled Grace and Emma in a room that was far too fine for orphan girls, with a real bed and glass windows, and a fireplace that actually drew properly. Rest, Maggie said, tucking blankets around Grace with surprising gentleness. You're safe now. Are we? Grace asked. That man, Mr. Blackwood, he looks at me like I'm a ghost. Maggie's hands stilled. What do you remember about your mother, Grace, about your early childhood? Not much. Fragments. Someone singing in Chinese. Oh, Maggie inhaled sharply. Big houses, gardens. But those can't be real memories. We were always poor. Sometimes, Maggie said carefully, poverty is safer than wealth. Before Grace could ask what that meant, Dr. Hayes entered with his medical bag. He examined both girls thoroughly while Maggie hovered, anxiety radiating from her despite her calm facade. The baby will recover, he announced. She's stronger than she looks. The girl has mild frostbite, but she'll keep all her fingers and toes. Thank God, Maggie breathed, then caught herself. I mean, that's good news for Ms. Blackwood. Dr. Hayes gave her a long look. Sarah, Maggie, she corrected sharply. You can't keep this up. He deserves to know. They all deserve to know. Know what? Grace asked, but the adults ignored her. Samuel Blackwood entered, then filling the doorway. His eyes went immediately to Emma, sleeping peacefully in a drawer converted to a makeshift cradle. My granddaughter, he said with wonder. Sarah's baby. You don't know that, Maggie said quickly. A birthmark isn't proof. It's proof enough for me. He turned to Grace. And you, child, you're not who you think you are either. Samuel, Dr. Hayes warned, be careful. Careful, I've been careful for 12 years. Careful got me a dead daughter and a missing granddaughter. He knelt beside Grace's bed. Your mother was Catherine Sullivan, yes, but she was also Catherine Harper before she married. And before that, she was Catherine Mills, daughter of my stable master. Grace's world tilted. That's not possible. She grew up on my estate, was childhood friends with my daughter Sarah. They looked enough alike to be sisters, both small, both quick, both too clever for their own good. His voice grew thick with memory. The night of the fire, Catherine was supposed to be watching Sarah while my wife and I attended the governor's ball. Samuel, enough, Maggie said sharply, but he continued inexorable as an avalanche. The fire started in Sarah's room. They found 2 bodies burned beyond recognition. We assumed it was Sarah and Catherine. But what if Catherine saved her? What if she ran with her? Why would she do that? Grace asked, though part of her already knew. Because someone set that fire. Someone who wanted my daughter dead. Samuel's face darkened. The syndicate, a group of business rivals who knew the only way to break me was to take my family. Grace thought of her mother's last words finally making sense. Should have been me, should have saved her, the moon baby, the switch. You think my mother switched us? Grace said slowly. Saved your daughter and let everyone think she died. Yes. Then where is she? Where's Sarah? Everyone looked at Maggie, who stood frozen by the window. Tell them, Dr. Hayes said quietly. It's time, child. Maggie turned slowly, and as she did, she pulled her high collar down, revealing extensive burn scars across her neck and jaw. Then she spoke, and her voice had lost its accent, revealing crisp Boston tones. I'm here, Papa. I've been here all along. The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel stared at her, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, and a pain so deep it seemed to stop his breathing. Sarah, the word came out broken. Hello, Papa. Tears streamed down her scarred face. I'm so sorry for everything. Samuel crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, both of them sobbing. Grace watched, feeling like an intruder in this moment of reunion, until Sarah pulled away and looked at her. Your mother saved me, pushed me out the window into the garden pond, then went back for something. I thought she was behind me. By the time I realized she wasn't, the whole room was engulfed. She touched her scars. I got these trying to go back for her. But the bodies? Catherine's mother had come to visit her that night secretly. No one knew. She died in the fire along with someone else. A vagrant maybe who'd broken in to rob the place. Wrong place, wrong time. Grace tried to process this. Her mother had saved Sarah Blackwood and let everyone think they'd both died. But why not reveal the truth later? The syndicate, Sarah answered her unspoken question. Your mother knew they'd try again if they knew I lived. So she hid me with the Chinese merchants who supplied our household. Told me to never reveal myself, to stay dead. Her voice broke. I was 12, terrified. I did what she said. And you've been hiding ever since. Samuel said, his voice a mix of joy and anger. 12 years, Sarah. 12 years I've mourned you. 12 years you've been safe from those who would use me against you. Sarah pulled away. But now there's Emma, my daughter. Another silence, this one sharp with new tension. Your daughter, Samuel repeated. Who's the father? Sarah's chin lifted, a gesture Grace recognized from somewhere deep in memory. Does it matter? Of course it do. The father is dead, Hayes interrupted. Died before Emma was born. That's all anyone needs to know. But Grace saw the look that passed between Sarah and the doctor. Another secret, another lie. This family seemed built on them. Emma chose that moment to wake, crying for food. Sarah moved to her, immediately gathering the baby with a hunger that spoke of months of separation. As she held her daughter for what seemed like the first time in forever, she looked at Grace. Your mother gave me life. Let me give you one in return. You're not nobody from nowhere, Grace Sullivan. You're the girl who saved my daughter, which makes you family. I don't understand any of this, Grace admitted. You don't have to, Samuel said, his voice rough with emotion. All you need to know is that you have a home now. Both of you do. But even as warmth spread through Grace's chest at the word home, she could see the shadows gathering. Jake Morrison stood by the door, hand on his gun, watching the windows. Dr. Hayes was burning papers in the fireplace, evidence of something. And Sarah kept touching her scars, as if reminding herself why she'd hidden for so long. The storm outside had passed, but Grace could feel another one building, human and dangerous, and aimed at this fragile, newly formed family. They'll come, won't they? Grace asked. The syndicate, when they learn Sarah's alive. Samuel's face hardened into something that made Grace understand how he'd built his empire. Let them come. I've spent 12 years believing I had nothing left to lose. Now I have everything to fight for. Sarah looked at him with eyes that held 12 years of distance. You can't fight them all, Papa. Not with violence. Then how? She smiled, and for the first time Grace could see the clever girl who'd hidden in plain sight for over a decade. With the truth, but not the one they expect. 3 days had passed since the blizzard, since revelations had shattered and reformed their world. Grace had been moved into the mansion Samuel Blackwood insisted on it, while Sarah maintained her cover at the Oriental Paradise. They were playing a delicate game now, pretending nothing had changed while preparing for everything to change. Grace stood at the window of her new room, a space larger than the entire orphanage dormitory, watching riders approach through the melting snow. She'd learned to recognize the important ones: Tom Bradley, the foreman who knew Sarah's identity and had kept it secret; Jake Morrison, whose loyalty had been bought with truth rather than gold. And now a new figure, elegant, even on horseback, dressed in clothes that whispered money. Mr. Ashford, Sarah said behind her, making Grace jump. Sarah moved like a ghost these days, using the servant passages she'd played in as a child. The syndicate's main negotiator. He's coming here. They've heard about Emma, about you. They were curious. Sarah's face was grim. She'd cut her hair short and dyed it darker, making her look even less like the girl in the old photographs. Papa thinks he can handle them with lawyers and guns. He doesn't understand they've evolved past such crude methods. Grace watched Mr. Ashford dismount, his movements precise as a dancer's. What do they want? Everything. They always have. Sarah moved to stand beside her. 20 years ago, they were just business rivals. Now there's something else, connected to judges, senators, even the president's inner circle. They don't just want Papa's money. They want his empire as a stepping stone to bigger things. And they tried to kill you to get it. Sarah touched her scars absently. That was the old guard, Vincent Morris specifically. He's dead now. Ashford is different, smarter. He doesn't burn children. He turns them into weapons. A knock at the door interrupted them. Tom Bradley entered, his weathered face troubled. Miss Sarah, your father wants you in the study. Ashford's asking about the baby. Sarah's entire demeanor shifted, becoming Maggie Chen again, submissive, accented, invisible. It was disturbing to watch. Tell Mr. Blackwood the innkeeper will attend to his guest shortly, she said, her voice completely different. Tom's mouth tightened. This charade is dangerous, girl. Everything's dangerous now, Tom. In the study, Grace was shocked to see how young Ashford was, perhaps 30, with the kind of refined features that suggested European education and old money. He rose politely when Sarah entered, though his eyes dismissed her as unimportant. Ah, the heroic innkeeper, he said smoothly. I hear you helped rescue a baby from the storm. I did what anyone would do, sir, Sarah replied, her accent thick. Anyone wouldn't have risked their life for strangers. He turned to Grace. And you, the orphan girl. Quite the little savior. Something in his tone made Grace's skin crawl. She moved closer to Sarah instinctively. Samuel entered then, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ashford, to what do I owe the displeasure? Straight to business as always. Ashford smiled, showing perfect teeth. I'm here about the child, the baby. There are questions about her parentage. She's my granddaughter. Is she? Your daughter is dead, Blackwood, has been for 12 years. Sarah had a child before she died, hidden for her safety. How convenient. Ashford pulled out a leather portfolio, and yet there's no record of a pregnancy, no birth certificate, nothing but your word and a birthmark that could be coincidence. What do you want? Samuel's voice could have cut steel. The truth, always the truth. Ashford's smile widened. You see, we have information suggesting Sarah Blackwood survived that fire, that she's been living under an assumed identity all these years. The room went absolutely still. Grace felt Sarah tense beside her. That's absurd, Samuel said, but Grace heard the slight waver. Is it a young girl matching her description? Was seen with Chinese traders the week after the fire. The body found was too burned for proper identification. And then there's the curious case of Maggie Chen arrives in town 12 years ago. No history, speaks multiple languages, despite claiming to be a simple merchant's daughter. He looked directly at Sarah then, and Grace saw recognition in his eyes. He knew. Somehow he knew. What do you want? Samuel repeated. A partnership. The syndicate is willing to legitimize your granddaughter's claim, ensure no one questions her inheritance. In exchange, you merge your railroad interest with ours. That would give you controlling interest in Western transportation. Yes, it would. Samuel stood slowly, his massive frame intimidating even in age. Get out. Consider carefully, Blackwood. Without our support, that baby is just another orphan. With it, she's an heiress. Ashford gathered his portfolio. And if Sarah is alive, well, the syndicate has a long memory. The people who wanted her dead might feel they have unfinished business. Is that a threat? It's a historical observation. Good day. After he left, they all stood frozen. Finally, Sarah dropped her accent. He knows. How boy I am, Samuel demanded. Someone talked. Someone always talks. She looked at Dr. Hayes, who'd remained silent throughout. William, the old doctor sighed, there's something else, something I haven't told you. Vincent Morris, the one who ordered the fire, he had a son. So, that son is Charles Ashford. He took his mother's maiden name, distanced himself from his father's crude methods. But the goal remains the same. Sarah sank into a chair. The son of the man who tried to kill me knows I'm alive. We need to run, Grace said urgently. Take Emma and disappear. No, Samuel said firmly. I'm done running, done hiding, done letting them control our lives through fear. Then what do we do? Jake Morrison, who'd been silent by the door, finally spoke. We fight, but not how they expect. That night, Sarah sat in Grace's room, teaching her the things Catherine Sullivan never had the chance to. How to read the subtle politics of powerful men. How to hide intelligence behind innocence. How to be invisible in plain sight. Your mother was brilliant at this, Sarah said, brushing Grace's red hair, so like Catherine's, it made her heart ache. She could play the simple maid perfectly, but she spoke 3 languages and read everything she could get her hands on. Why didn't she tell me about you, about any of this? To protect you, the less you knew, the safer you were. Sarah sectioned Grace's hair, beginning an elaborate braid. But also, I think, because the guilt was eating her alive. She saved me but lost her mother in the process. That kind of weight changes a person. Grace was quiet for a moment. The fire, what really happened? Sarah's hands stilled. I was reading in bed. Your mother was in the sitting room mending. Her mother had come to surprise her. It was Catherine's birthday the next day. No one knew she was there. She resumed, braiding her voice distant. I smelled smoke first. By the time I realized what was happening, the hallway was already in flames. Catherine burst in, grabbed me, literally threw me out the window into the bin, said she was right behind me. But she wasn't. She went back for something. I never knew what. The fire spread so fast they'd used accelerant. Professional work. Sarah's voice turned bitter. Vincent Morris didn't leave anything to chance, except he didn't count on Catherine's quick thinking, and her mother died trying to escape. They found her body by the servants' stairs, along with someone else, a man never identified. The authorities assumed it was Catherine and some thief who'd chosen the wrong night. Grace absorbed this, the tragedy of it settling into her bones. So my grandmother died in my mother's place, and my mother lived with that guilt. We all lived with guilt. Me for surviving, your mother for the choice she made, my father for not being there, Dr. Hayes for keeping the secret. Sarah finished the braid, securing it with a ribbon. Guilt is the currency of survival, Grace. The question is what you purchase with it. A soft cry interrupted them, Emma waking in her cradle. Sarah moved to her, immediately gathering the baby with practiced ease. Grace watched them together, mother and daughter, and felt an ache for something she'd never have. Who was her father? Grace asked quietly. Sarah's face closed off. Someone who can't acknowledge her. That's all that matters. But Grace had been watching, learning. She'd seen how Dr. Hayes looked at Emma, the pain in his eyes. The careful way he avoided being alone with Sarah. The way Sarah trusted him above all others. Dr. Hayes, Grace said, not a question. Sarah went very still. You're too clever for your own good, just like your mother. He's old enough to be your father. He was kind to me when no one else could be. When I was 19 alone, terrified of being discovered, kindness can look like love when you're desperate enough. Sarah's voice was hollow. It was just once. A moment of weakness for both of us. Emma was the result. Does he know? Of course he knows. Why do you think he's stayed all these years? Guilt is his currency too. They sat in comfortable silence, Emma making small sounds of contentment. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Ashford won't wait long for an answer. We need to decide fight or fold. What does your father want? To fight. He always wants to fight. It's how he built his empire. And you? Sarah looked down at Emma, then at Grace. I want my daughter to grow up without looking over her shoulder. I want you to have the life your mother sacrificed everything to give you. I want to stop being Maggie Chen and remember how to be Sarah Blackwood. Then we fight. Sarah smiled, sad and proud at once. You sound like your mother. She was always braver than me. She saved you. Yes, and now I need to save myself. The meeting was set for neutral ground, the Oriental paradise where Sarah could maintain her disguise while controlling the environment. Ashford arrived with two men lawyers by their look. Samuel brought Jake Morrison and Tom Bradley. Dr. Hayes insisted on being present, and Grace refused to be excluded. They gathered in Sarah's private dining room, the one she reserved for special guests. She prepared everything meticulously, tea that could hide the tremor in her hands, food that required focus to eat properly, windows positioned so the light would blind anyone looking too closely at her face. Mr. Blackwood, Ashford began, have you considered our offer? Have a counter offer, Samuel said. Full legitimization of Emma's inheritance, no questions asked. In exchange, I'll sell you the spur lines, not the main routes, just the branches. Ashford laughed. The worthless branches that barely turn profit generous. Those worthless branches run through land that is about to become very valuable. The government's planning new military posts along those routes. Supply contracts alone will triple their worth within 2 years. Grace saw Ashford's eyes sharpen. He hadn't known about the military posts. Score 1 for Samuel. Interesting. And how do you know about these supposed posts? I have friends in Washington, just as you do. Friends can be fickle. Family less so. Samuel pulled out a telegram. My nephew is Secretary Stanton's aide. This came this morning. Ashford read it, his expression neutral, but his knuckles white where he gripped the paper. This changes things. Yes, it does. But it doesn't address the main issue. Ashford set down the telegram. The question of Sarah Blackwood. The room tensed. Sarah poured tea with steady hands, playing her role perfectly. Sarah Blackwood is dead, Samuel said firmly. Is she? Ashford stood, began walking around the room. You know, my father was many things, cruel, ambitious, ruthless, but he was also thorough. He kept records of everything. He stopped behind Sarah's chair. She didn't react, didn't tense, just continued pouring tea. Those records include some interesting details about the night of the fire. For instance, that Catherine Sullivan's mother was seen at the train station that very afternoon arriving for a surprise visit. Sarah's hand trembled slightly. Tea spilled on the white tablecloth. "Clumsy of me," she said in Maggie's voice. "Indeed." Ashford returned to his seat. It would be tragic if certain documents were to surface. Documents that might suggest Catherine Sullivan murdered her own mother and Sarah Blackwood for money. "That's a lie," Grace exploded. "Is it? A poor servant's daughter, desperate for a better life, sees an opportunity. Stage a fire, fake her own death, and the heirs collect payment from those who wanted them dead." Ashford smiled coldly. "It's a compelling narrative." "You have no proof," Samuel growled. "I have enough to raise questions. Sometimes that's all you need." He looked at Sarah again. Unless, of course, Sarah Blackwood were to suddenly appear alive and well to dispute such claims. The trap was elegant, Grace had to admit. Either Sarah revealed herself, making her a target, or she stayed hidden and let them destroy Catherine's memory. "You bastard!" Samuel started to rise, but Jake's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "Business, Blackwood. Just business." Ashford gathered his papers. "You have 1 week to decide. The spur line's in a partnership, or we destroy the memory of a servant who died trying to save your daughter. Your choice." After he left, they sat in stunned silence. Finally, Dr. Hayes spoke. "He's more dangerous than his father. Vincent would have just tried to kill us. Charles wants to own us." "We could kill him first," Jake suggested calmly. "No," Sarah said, dropping her accent. "That's the old way. Papa's way. It doesn't work anymore." "Then what do you suggest?" Sarah stood, moved to the window. Outside, the town was going about its business, unaware of the war being waged in this room. "We give him what he wants, but not how he expects." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Sarah would reveal herself, but on her terms and her way, with witnesses Ashford couldn't intimidate her by. "A party," she announced. "The Oriental Paradise's 5th anniversary. Everyone who matters will be invited." "That's suicide," Tom Bradley protested. "You'll be exposed vulnerable. I'll be public. There's a difference." Sarah looked at her father. "Invite the governor, the territorial judge, the newspaper men from Denver and San Francisco. Make it the event of the season." Samuel understood immediately. Too many witnesses for violence, too public for threats. "Exactly, and we control the narrative." She turned to Grace. "You'll need to be prepared. Once I reveal myself, they'll come after you too. The girl who saved the heir's daughter, Catherine Sullivan's daughter. You'll be famous." "I don't want to be famous." "Neither did I, but sometimes we don't get to choose." Sarah touched her scars. "Dr. Hayes, I'll need your help with something." The old doctor nodded. "The medical records from the fire, I kept them. All of them, including the ones that prove the burned body couldn't have been Sarah Blackwood. Wrong age, wrong height, details I obscured at the time." Grace watched the plan unfold, each piece fitting together like a puzzle. They were building a story within a story, truth, wrapped in revelation, wrapped in theater. "What about Emma?" she asked. "She's the key to everything," Sarah said. "My daughter, my proof of identity, my reason for hiding. No one can argue with a mother protecting her child." "Ashford will try. Let him. Every attack on a baby makes him look worse." Sarah's smile was sharp. "I learned something in 12 years of hiding. People will forgive almost anything done for love, especially a mother's love." Jake Morrison spoke up. "There's another problem. Security. Once you're exposed, every old enemy your father has will know where to find you. Then we make sure they also know the cost of trying." Samuel's voice was granite. "I've held back for 12 years, afraid of escalating. No more. Papa. No, Sarah. You've been dead to the world for 12 years because I couldn't protect you. That ends now." He looked at Jake. "Hire more men. The best. I want this town locked down." "That'll cost." "I don't care what it costs." Sarah moved to her father, took his hands. "You can't protect everyone from everything." "I can try. That's what started this, your need to control everything." "No," Samuel said firmly. "What started this was evil men wanting what I'd built. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine." They stared at each other, 12 years of separation and misunderstanding between them. Finally, Sarah said, then we do it my way. Public, legal, undeniable. And if Ashford doesn't accept it, Sarah's expression hardened, and for the first time, Grace could see Samuel Blackwood's daughter clearly. Then we destroy him with the one thing he values more than money: reputation. The week that followed was orchestrated chaos. The Oriental paradise was transformed into something from a fairy tale: Chinese lanterns and Wyoming wildflowers, silk and leather, east meeting west, in a deliberate statement of Sarah's dual identity. Grace found herself in the middle of it all, running errands, learning to walk in proper shoes, being fitted for a dress that cost more than her mother had made in a year. Sarah insisted on teaching her everything: how to curtsy, how to hold a wine glass, how to smile when you wanted to scream. Why does any of this matter? Grace asked, frustrated, after the fifth attempt at a proper greeting. Because perception is reality among these people, Sarah explained patiently. If you look like you belong, they'll believe you do. Your mother understood this. She could switch between servant and lady with just a change in posture. I'm not my mother. No, you're something new, the bridge between their world and ours. Sarah adjusted Grace's shoulders. You save the air. That makes you valuable to them. Use it. Dr. Hayes arrived with a box of documents. Everything's here. Medical records, witness testimonies I gathered secretly, even a letter from your mother she left with the Chinese merchants. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the letter. Mama wrote to me. Before she died, she knew you were alive, I told her. Her last words were for you, Bum. Sarah read the letter silently, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she held it out to Grace. Read it, she said. The letter was short, written in an elegant hand. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then Dr. Hayes kept his promise, and you survived. I am dying now, but I die with joy knowing you live. The choice Catherine made saved our family. Honor her sacrifice by living fully, not just surviving. The baby you carry is a gift, not a shame. Love her as I loved you, fiercely, completely, without reservation. Your father will need time to forgive the deception. Be patient with him. He loves with his whole heart, even when that heart is broken. Come back to us when you're ready. But if you never do know that you were loved every moment of every day, whether we could see you or not, all my love, Mama. They all cried then, Sarah, Grace, even Dr. Hayes. Samuel arrived to find them like that, surrounded by evidence and tears. What's happened? Sarah wordlessly handed him the letter. He read it, his face crumbling. She knew, he whispered. Margaret knew you were alive. She died believing I'd come back someday. Why didn't she tell Matim? Dr. Hayes answered. Because she knew you'd tear the world apart looking for Sarah. The syndicate was watching your every move. Your grief was her protection. Samuel sank into a chair. 12 years of lies. 12 years of love, Sarah corrected. Everyone who lied did it from love. Emma started crying, and Grace went to her, lifting the baby with practiced ease now. Emma settled immediately, recognizing her rescuer's touch. She trusts you, Sarah observed. We saved each other. Yes, you did. Sarah stood, shaking off the melancholy. 3 more days, then everything changes. Are you ready? Sarah looked at her reflection in the mirror. Maggie Chen staring back the carefully constructed identity she'd worn for so long. No, she said honestly, but Catherine Sullivan wasn't ready to save me either. Sometimes courage is just doing what needs to be done, ready or not. The night of the party arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if nature itself wanted to witness what was about to unfold. The Oriental paradise glowed with hundreds of lanterns, and the street outside was packed with carriages from 3 territories. Grace stood in her new dress, deep green silk that complemented her red hair, watching from an upstairs window. As the powerful and curious arrived, she recognized some from newspaper sketches: Governor Mills, Judge Morrison, the railroad baron Kingston, and dozens of others who shaped the frontier's future. Nervous? Sarah asked, appearing beside her. She still wore Maggie Chen's simple clothes, her transformation planned for maximum impact. Terrified? Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Sarah studied the crowd below. Ashford's here. 3 carriages, he brought witnesses of his own. Is that bad? It's perfect. The more people who see this, the harder it is for him to rewrite history later. Hayes joined them, formally dressed for the first time Grace had seen. It's time, Sarah. She nodded, took a deep breath. Grace, you know what to do. Present Emma at exactly 9 o'clock. Make sure everyone sees the birthmark. And if something goes wrong, Jake Morrison gets us out the back. Tom Bradley has horses ready. Sarah hugged her, suddenly fierce and quick. Thank you for saving Emma, for being brave, for being Catherine's daughter. Before Grace could respond, Sarah was gone, heading to her private rooms to transform. Dr. Hayes lingered. She's scared, Grace observed. She should be. She's about to resurrect from the dead. He paused. Your mother would be proud of you. Would she? I'm helping perpetuate a lie. No, you're helping reveal a truth that was buried in lies. He squeezed her shoulder. There's a difference. Down below, Samuel Blackwood commanded the room, playing host with the confidence of a king. But Grace could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept checking exits and windows. Jake Morrison moved through the crowd like a wolf among sheep, cataloging threats. He'd positioned men throughout the building, some obvious, some hidden. The Oriental Paradise was a fortress disguised as a party. At exactly 8:45, Grace descended the stairs with Emma. The baby wore a white christening gown that had belonged to Sarah, one of the few things saved from the fire. The crowd parted, whispers following them. The hero girl saved the baby in the blizzard. Blackwood's granddaughter, they say. Charles Ashford materialized beside them, smooth as oil. Miss Sullivan, how lovely you look. Mr. Ashford. Grace kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. And this must be the famous baby. He reached toward Emma, but Grace stepped back. She's shy with strangers. How protective of you. His smile didn't reach his eyes, like a little mother. And like someone who understands predators. Grace shot back, surprised by her own boldness. Ashford's expression sharpened. Careful, girl. You're swimming in deep waters. I learned to swim in deeper ones. Before he could respond, the clock chimed 9. Grace lifted Emma higher, making sure the light caught the birthmark on her wrist. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Samuel's voice boomed. Many of you have heard rumors about this child. I'm here to confirm them. This is my granddaughter, Emma Sarah Blackwood, daughter of my daughter Sarah. Your dead daughter, someone called out. That's what we believed, Samuel said carefully. We were wrong. The crowd erupted in whispers, but Ashford's voice cut through. This is absurd, Blackwood. Your daughter died 12 years ago. We all attended the funeral. We attended a funeral, Samuel corrected. We buried someone, but not Sarah. Then where has she been? Ashford demanded. Why hide for 12 years? Because someone tried to murder her. The silence that followed was absolute. Samuel continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. The fire that supposedly killed my daughter was set deliberately. The person responsible wanted her dead to destroy me. So yes, she hid. She survived. And she had a child. Convenient story, Ashford said. But stories aren't proof. No, a new voice said from the top of the stairs. But I am. Everyone turned. Grace gasped. Sarah stood at the top of the stairs, but she was transformed. Gone were Maggie Chen's simple clothes and submissive posture. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk, her mother's diamonds at her throat. Her hair was pinned up, revealing her face fully, including the burn scars she'd hidden for so long. But most striking was her bearing pure Blackwood authority. My name is Sarah Margaret Blackwood, she said, descending slowly. 12 years ago, someone tried to burn me alive. I survived, scarred but breathing, saved by the courage of a servant girl who died getting me out. I've been hiding ever since, living as Maggie Chen, waiting for the right moment to reclaim my life. The crowd exploded. People pushed forward, shouting questions. But Sarah raised her hand, and somehow, miraculously, they quieted. I know you have questions. I have proof. She held up the documents Dr. Hayes had prepared. Medical records showing the body buried in my place was the wrong height, wrong age. Witness testimonies from the Chinese merchants who hid me. A letter from my mother, written when she knew I was alive. Forgeries, Ashford snarled. This woman is an imposter. Sarah turned to him, and Grace saw something dangerous in her eyes. Am I? Then how do I know about the scar on your shoulder, Charles? The one you got when you were 8, falling from my father's horse because you were too proud to admit you couldn't ride. Ashford went white. That wasn't public knowledge. How do I know your father used to meet with mine in the blue study always at midnight, always with brandy. How do I know you had a sister who died of scarlet fever and your father blamed my family because we didn't get sick? Stop, Ashford said quietly. How do I know, Sarah continued relentlessly, that your father confessed to setting the fire before he died, that he wrote it all down, gave it to Dr. Hayes in exchange for morphine to ease his passing? The crowd turned to Dr. Hayes, who nodded solemnly. Vincent Morris confessed to me 3 years ago. I have it in writing, witnessed and notarized. You're lying, Ashford said, but his voice lacked conviction. The truth, Charles, is that your father tried to murder a child for money and power. He failed. I survived. And now I'm back to claim what's mine, not my father's empire, but my daughter's future. She took Emma from Grace, holding her so everyone could see. This is what matters. Not old feuds or business rivalries. This child, the next generation, the future we build for them. Governor Mills stepped forward. Miss Blackwood, if you are indeed she, why reveal yourself now? Why risk it? Sarah looked directly at Ashford. Because someone threatened to destroy the memory of the woman who saved me. Catherine Sullivan died a hero, and I won't let anyone say otherwise. And because my daughter deserves to know who she is, where she comes from, without shame or shadows. Pretty words, Ashford said, recovering some composure. But the syndicate, a new voice interrupted, is under federal investigation. Everyone turned. A man in a military uniform stood in the doorway, flanked by federal marshals. Colonel James Blackwood, Samuel said with satisfaction. My nephew. The colonel stepped forward. Charles Ashford, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and attempted murder. This is ridiculous. We have Vincent Morris's full confession, including names, dates, and amounts paid. The syndicate's finances have been seized. It's over. As the marshals moved in, Ashford looked at Sarah with pure hatred. This isn't finished. Yes, Sarah said quietly, it is. Your father failed to kill me. You failed to silence me. The syndicate is broken. It's finished. They took him away and the crowd erupted again, but this time in celebration and shock. Sarah stood in the center of it all, holding Emma, looking simultaneously triumphant and exhausted. Grace moved to her side. You did it. We did it. Sarah touched Grace's face gently. Catherine's daughter and Sarah Blackwood, finishing what our mother started. The party continued past midnight, but Sarah retreated to her private rooms with Grace and Emma. Samuel joined them along with Dr. Hayes and Jake Morrison. The colonel has been building this case for 2 years, Samuel explained. We needed Ashford to make a public move, something undeniable. Tonight gave us that. You knew, Sarah asked. You knew the federal marshals were coming. I suspected. James has been feeding me information, but he couldn't move without proof. Samuel looked at Dr. Hayes. Vincent's confession was the key. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to be genuinely surprised, genuinely angry. The crowd had to believe in your resurrection. Sarah laughed, but it was edged with hysteria. 12 years of hiding, and it ends with theater. Everything ends with theater out here, Jake Morrison said pragmatically. At least no one died. Catherine died, Grace said quietly. Her mother died. They deserve to be remembered correctly. Sarah pulled Grace close. They will be. I'll make sure of it. There's something else, Dr. Hayes said uncomfortably. Something I need to tell you all. About Emma's father. Sarah stiffened. William, don't. It's time, Sarah. All the truths tonight. He looked at Samuel. I'm Emma's father. The silence was deafening. Samuel's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, disgust, resignation. Finally, he said, You're old enough to be Sarah's father. I know it happened once. A moment of weakness, of comfort, sought and given. I'm not proud of it. You took advantage. No, Sarah interrupted. He didn't. I was 20, not a child. I was lonely, frightened, desperate for any connection to my old life. William was kind, that's all. Samuel looked between them, then at Emma, sleeping peacefully. Does she know? She will when she's old enough to understand, Dr. Hayes said. I won't be a father to her. I'm too old, too set in my ways. But I'll make sure she's provided for. She's a Blackwood, Samuel said firmly. She doesn't need your provision. She's also part mine. That matters whether you like it or not. They stared at each other, two old men connected by a child neither had expected. Grace broke the tension. She's Emma. That's what matters. Not who her father is or what her name is. She's the baby who survived a blizzard who brought us all together. Sarah smiled at her. When did you become so wise? When I realized that families aren't made by blood. They're made by choice. She looked around the room. We're all here by choice now. The next morning brought consequences. The newspaper men had worked through the night, and by dawn the story was everywhere. Sarah Blackwood Lives, 12-year deception revealed. Sarah read the headlines with a mixture of satisfaction and dread. Well, there's no going back now. Did you want to? Oh yeah, Grace asked. Part of me did. Maggie Chen was simpler, safer. But not you. No, not me. A knock interrupted them. Tom Bradley entered, his face grim. We have a problem. Some of Ashford's men didn't get picked up by the marshals. They're holed up at the Garrison Ranch talking about revenge. Samuel, who'd been playing with Emma, stood immediately. How many? Maybe a dozen. Professional guns. I'll handle it, Jake Morrison said. Not alone, Samuel countered. We go together. Papa, no, Sarah protested. You're not a young man. I'm young enough to protect my family. This is exactly what they want to draw you out, make you vulnerable. Samuel's jaw set stubbornly. I won't hide while others fight my battles. Then I'm coming too, Sarah said. Absolutely not. Papa, I've been fighting this battle for 12 years. I've earned the right to finish it. They argued, but Grace could see Sarah winning. She had her father's stubbornness and 12 years of practice in survival. Finally, Samuel conceded, you can come, but you stay back. Far back. Of course, Sarah agreed, but Grace caught the look in her eye. Sarah had no intention of staying back. As they prepared to leave, Grace made a decision. I'm coming too. No, everyone said simultaneously. Emma needs me, Grace argued. If something happens to all of you who protects her, it was manipulative but effective. They couldn't all leave Emma unprotected. Grace stays with Emma and Dr. Hayes, Samuel decided. Tom, leave your best men here. But as they rode out, Grace saw Sarah slip something to her, a small revolver. Just in case, Sarah whispered. Your mother taught me to shoot. Seems fitting, I teach you. The Garrison Ranch sat in a valley surrounded by red rocks that looked like blood in the afternoon sun. Jake Morrison studied it through field glasses. They're fortified, windows boarded, men on the roof. They're expecting us. Let them expect, Samuel said grimly. We could wait them out, Tom Bradley suggested. They'll run out of supplies eventually. No, every hour they exist is an hour they could hurt Sarah or Emma. Samuel checked his rifle. We end this today. Sarah watched from the ridge, supposedly safe with 2 guards. But she knew something the men didn't. There was a back way into the ranch through the old mine shaft. She'd explored it as a child when the Garrisons and Blackwoods had been friends. While the men planned their assault, Sarah slipped away. The mine entrance was overgrown but passable. She moved through the darkness, memory guiding her feet. She emerged in the ranch's root cellar, dust-covered and determined. Above, she could hear voices, Ashford's men planning their defense. Kill the old man first. Girl's the real target. Worth more alive, boss said. Sarah crept up the cellar stairs, the revolver heavy in her hand. She'd never killed anyone but for Emma, for Grace, for the chance at a real life she would. The kitchen was empty. She moved through the house like a ghost, like Maggie Chen, invisible in plain sight. In the main room, 6 men clustered around a table, weapons laid out like promises of violence. Outside, gunfire erupted. The frontal assault had begun. The men rushed to windows, leaving their backs exposed. Sarah saw her chance. She stepped out, gun raised. Gentlemen, they spun, weapons rising, but she was already firing. Not to kill, to disarm, to disable. Shoulder, thigh, shooting arm. Her mother had taught her to shoot rabbits. These were just larger targets. 3 down before they recovered. The 4th got a shot off, grazing her arm. The 5th tackled her, and they went down hard. The gun skittered away. He was stronger, heavier, his hands finding her throat. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Black spots danced in her vision. Then his weight was gone. Jake Morrison stood over his body knife, bloody. Thought you were supposed to stay back, he said mildly. I've never been good at following orders. The fight was over in minutes after that. With their defensive positions compromised from inside, Ashford's men surrendered quickly. Some would hang, others would prison. The syndicate's last gasp died in that ranch. Samuel found Sarah in the kitchen, Dr. Hayes treating her arm. "You could have been killed," he said, "but I wasn't. You disobeyed me. I learned from the best." They stared at each other, then Samuel laughed, really laughed for the first time since she'd revealed herself. "God, you're just like your mother. Stubborn, brave, impossible. I'm also like you. God help us all." Back at the Oriental Paradise, they found Grace teaching Emma to clap the baby, giggling with delight. The domestic scene was so normal, so peaceful after the violence that Sarah almost cried. "It's over," Grace asked. "It's over," Sarah confirmed. "What now?" Sarah considered. "Now we live. Really live, not just survive. Here, where else? This is home." Over the following days, decisions were made. The Oriental Paradise would remain open, but with a different purpose. A school for girls, teaching them what Catherine had taught Sarah, what Sarah had taught Grace. Independence through intelligence. Samuel merged some holdings with the remains of the legitimate syndicate businesses, creating a trust for Emma and any future children. The railroad would connect communities, not divide them. Dr. Hayes announced his retirement but would stay in town. Someone needs to make sure Emma learns science along with all that shooting and riding. Jake Morrison surprised everyone by asking to adopt Grace formally. "You need a legal guardian. Might as well be me." Grace was stunned. "But you're a gunfighter." "Was? Now I'm thinking of taking up ranching. Seems quieter." "You want to be my father?" "Want to give you what your mother couldn't, safety, stability, a name that carries weight." Grace looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Family by choice, remember?" "Yes," Grace said. "Yes, I'd like that." The federal case against the syndicate revealed deeper corruption than anyone had imagined. Judges, senators, even a cabinet member were implicated. The trials would take years, but the immediate threat was neutralized. Sarah testified in court, her scars visible, her voice steady as she recounted the night of the fire. Grace sat in the gallery holding Emma, watching the woman who'd become her sister, in all but blood, face down the ghosts of her past. "They came for me because I was my father's weakness," Sarah said. "A child, an innocent. They thought killing me would break him." "And did it?" the prosecutor asked. "It broke all of us. My father lost his daughter. My mother died of grief. Catherine Sullivan lost her mother saving me. We all broke." She looked at Ashford, shackled in the defendant's chair. "But we also rebuilt. Stronger. Together." "Do you forgive them?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I forgive Vincent Morris. He's dead, and his hatred died with him. But Charles Ashford, he had choices. He chose cruelty. That's harder to forgive." Ashford was convicted. 25 years hard labor. As they led him away, he looked at Sarah one last time. "Your daughter will pay for this." Jake Morrison started forward, but Sarah stopped him. "No, she won't. Because she'll be raised with love, not hatred. She'll know her worth isn't in money or power, but in the choices she makes. You lost Charles, not just in court, but in life. You chose revenge over redemption. That's your tragedy, not ours." The Oriental Paradise Academy for Young Women opened 6 months later. Sarah insisted on naming Catherine Sullivan as co-founder, her portrait hanging next to Margaret Blackwood's in the entrance hall. Grace taught the younger girls, sharing the hard-won lessons of survival and strength. She was a natural teacher, patient, like her mother had been fierce when her students needed defending. "Why do we need to learn to shoot?" one girl asked. "Because the world isn't always kind to women," Grace answered. "Better to have the skill and not need it than need it and have it." Sarah taught languages, literature, the art of being seen and unseen as needed. She also taught them about China and silk, about the Chinese merchants who'd saved her, about the world beyond Wyoming. "Beauty and business aren't opposites," she told them. "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pour tea perfectly while negotiating a contract." Dr. Hayes, despite retirement, had taught sciences. "A woman who understands chemistry understands power," he'd say, showing them how to test for poisons, purify water, create medicines from plants. Even Samuel taught gruffly, explaining business and law. "Men will try to cheat you because you're women. Know the law better than they do. Use their assumptions against them." Emma grew surrounded by this extended family, toddling between classrooms, absorbing lessons before she could properly talk. Her first word was mama, her second was gay. Her attempt at grace, her third was fight. We may be teaching her too well, Sarah laughed. 2 years after the revelation, a carriage arrived bearing unexpected passengers, a Chinese family, elderly parents, and a younger woman. Sarah went pale when she saw them. Master Chen, she breathed, bowing deeply. The old man who'd hidden her, who'd claimed her as his daughter for 12 years, smiled. Mei Ling, he said, using the Chinese name he'd given her. You look well. I thought I'd never see you again. We heard about your courage. Had to come see for ourselves. The reunion was tearful. The Chens had risked everything, hiding Sarah, creating Maggie Chen's identity, teaching her their language and customs. They'd been her family when she couldn't have her own. This is my daughter, Sarah said, presenting Emma now, 3 and precocious. Emma, these are the people who saved Mama's life. Emma, in her serious way, attempted a bow. It was clumsy but sincere, and Master Chen laughed with delight. She has your spirit, he told Sarah. Then to Grace, and you must be Catherine's daughter. You knew my mother. She came to us the night of the fire begging us to hide Sarah. She traded her mother's jewelry for our silence and assistance. He pulled out a small box. We've kept this for you. Inside was a locket, tarnished silver, containing 2 tiny portraits, Catherine as a young woman and a man Grace didn't recognize. Your father, Master Chen said gently. She never told you. She said he died before I was born. He did, in the war, but he was a good man, a teacher. She loved him very much. Grace clutched the locket, this unexpected connection to a past she'd never known. The Chens stayed a month, and their presence changed the school. Mrs. Chen taught cooking and herbalism, showing the girls that food was medicine, art, and comfort combined. Master Chen taught calligraphy and meditation, helping them find stillness in their chaotic frontier lives. Balance, he told Sarah one evening. You've been 2 people for so long, Sarah and Maggie. Time to become one. I don't know how. Start with the name. What do you want Emma to call you? Sarah thought. Mama. But I want her to know about Mei Ling too, about the girl who survived by becoming someone else. Then teach her both. Heritage isn't singular. Jake Morrison and Grace's wedding was set for spring when the wildflowers bloomed. Grace was 18 now, no longer the starved orphan who'd saved a baby in a blizzard, but a young woman who'd found her place in the world. You don't have to do this, Sarah said, helping Grace with her dress. You're young, you have options now. I know. That's why I'm choosing this. Grace smiled. Jake sees me. Not the orphan, not the hero, just me. And I see him not the gunfighter, but the man who chose to be a father when he didn't have to. The wedding was held at the school, the students forming an honor guard with rifles, a detail that scandalized proper society and delighted the bride. Samuel walked Grace down the aisle, having declared himself her honorary grandfather. Your mother would be proud, he whispered. I hope so. Jake waited at the altar, cleaned up and nervous in a way that would have shocked his old enemies. When he saw Grace, his face transformed with wonder. Dr. Hayes performed the ceremony, having gotten himself ordained for the occasion. These 2 have chosen each other, not from desperation or convenience, but from genuine affection and respect. In a frontier where marriages are often practical arrangements, theirs is a love match. Emma, now 4, served as flower girl, very seriously distributing petals in exact intervals. When she reached the altar, she announced loudly, I did it perfectly. The laughter that followed broke any remaining tension. This was family, chosen, created, celebrated. As Grace and Jake exchanged vows, Sarah stood as witness, holding Emma's hand. She caught sight of herself in a window, scarred, but smiling, no longer hiding, no longer running. Mei Ling and Sarah Blackwood finally integrated into someone new. Do you take this man? Dr. Hayes asked Grace. I do. Do you take this woman? He asked Jake. Every day for the rest of my life. They kissed and Emma cheered and the students fired their rifles in the air. With blanks, Sarah had insisted, and for a moment everything was perfect. 10 years passed. The school grew from one building to a campus. Graduates went on to become teachers, business owners, even a territorial legislator. The Oriental Paradise Academy became known as the place where girls became formidable women. Emma, now 14, was her mother's daughter in stubbornness and her grandfather's in business acumen. But she also had Grace's compassion and Jake's steady courage. She'd grown up knowing her whole story, the fire, the hiding, the revelation, even the truth about her father. Does it bother you, Grace asked her once, that Dr. Hayes is your father? Why should it? He's brilliant and kind. He taught me to question everything and accept nothing at face value. That is not a bad inheritance. Grace, now 28 with 3 children of her own, marveled at Emma's composure. You're very mature for your age. I was raised by an entire town. Hard not to grow up fast. They were sitting in what had been the Oriental Paradise's main room, now a library filled with books in a dozen languages. Sarah entered with a telegram, her face troubled. What is it? Grace asked. Charles Ashford is dead, killed in prison. They absorbed this in silence. Then Emma said, Good. He threatened me when I was a baby. The world's better without him. Emma, Sarah admonished. What? It's true, some people choose darkness. He did. Repeatedly. Emma stood smoothing her dress, a practical garment that allowed for riding and shooting, which she did expertly. I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm not sad either. He was a chapter in our story, and now that chapter's closed. Grace and Sarah exchanged glances. When had the child become so wise? There's more, Sarah said. His mother wants to meet with us, apologize for her family's actions. Absolutely not, Grace said immediately. I agree, Sarah said, but she's also offering something: the original syndicate records. Names of everyone involved, their crimes documented. Why would she do that? Revenge on the men who corrupted her husband and son. Guilt. Who knows? Emma spoke up. We should get the records. Use them to protect other families from similar threats. It could be a trap, Grace warned. Everything could be a trap. Doesn't mean we hide from it. In the end, they met Mrs. Ashford now, Mrs. Williams having reclaimed her maiden name. She was a small, tired woman who looked older than her 60 years. I'm sorry, she said simply. I knew what Vincent was doing. I stayed silent. That silence cost you 12 years of your life. Your silence didn't scar me, Sarah said coldly. Your husband's actions did. Yes, Mrs. Williams pulled out a leather case. These are the records. Every bribe, every threat, every crime. Vincent documented everything, and Charles continued the practice. Use them as you see fit. Why now? Grace asked. Because I'm dying, cancer, the doctors say. I want to do one good thing before I go. She looked at Emma. You have your grandmother's eyes, Margaret Blackwood's. She was kind to me once when no one else was. I don't remember her, Emma said. She died when you were born, but she would have loved you fiercely. Mrs. Williams stood to leave, then paused. The sins of the fathers don't have to pass to the children. You're all proof of that. After she left, they opened the case. The records were damning, implicating half the territorial government. Samuel would know what to do with them. Justice, finally, Sarah said. Or revenge, Grace countered. Sometimes they're the same thing, Emma said. Sometimes they need to be. 5 more years passed. Emma, now 19, had been accepted to Radcliffe College, one of the few women's colleges in the East. The night before her departure, the entire extended family gathered at the mansion Samuel had built overlooking the town. I'll be back, Emma promised, seeing tears in Sarah's eyes. I know, but you're my baby leaving for the wide world. I'm hardly a baby. I can outshoot half the men in town and outthink the other half. That's what worries me, Samuel said gruffly. He was 72 now, white-haired but still formidable. Eastern men won't know what to do with you. Then they'll learn. Grace's children, Catherine, named for her mother William, and baby Sarah, ran through the gathering, their laughter echoing off the walls. Jake supervised them with the patience of a man who'd found peace late in life. Strange to think, he told Grace, I was hired to kill Samuel 20 years ago. Now my children call him Grandpa. Life has a way of surprising us, Grace agreed. Dr. Hayes, now genuinely elderly, sat with Emma by the fire. You'll study medicine. Among other things, I want to understand everything law, like Grandpa languages, like Mama's survival, like Aunt Grace. That's a lot for one lifetime. Then I'll have to live a very full life. He pulled out a small box. This was your grandmother Margaret's. Sarah didn't know I'd saved it. At the inside was a ring, simple gold with a small sapphire. It's beautiful. She would have wanted you to have it, to remember that you come from strong women: Margaret, who loved despite loss; Sarah, who survived despite everything; Grace, who saved when she had nothing to give. Emma hugged him, this man who was her father in blood, but grandfather in practice. Thank you for everything. The next morning, they all stood at the train station, the same platform where Grace had once stood desperate and alone reading letters from a dead man. Now it was full of family tears and promises. Write every week, Sarah demanded. I will. Don't trust Eastern boys, Samuels added. I won't. If you need anything, Grace started, I'll ask. Emma hugged them all, then boarded the train with the confidence of someone who'd been loved into strength. As the train pulled away, Sarah leaned against Grace. We did it. We raised her. We all raised her. The whole town raised her. And now she'll change the world. Or the world will try to change her. Sarah smiled. My money's on Emma. A month after Emma's departure, an unexpected visitor arrived at the school, a woman in her 30s, well-dressed but travel-worn, with green eyes that made Grace's heart stop. You're Catherine Sullivan's daughter, the woman said. Yes, who are you? Catherine Harper, your cousin. My mother was your mother's sister. Grace sank into a chair. Mother never mentioned a sister. They were estranged. My mother blamed yours for their mother's death in the fire. Catherine Harper sat across from Grace. I've spent years trying to find you. Why? Because family shouldn't be lost to old grudges, and because I have something that belongs to you. She pulled out a packet of letters yellowed with age. Your parents' correspondence. Your mother saved every letter your father wrote from the war. Grace took them with trembling hands. Her father's words, his thoughts, his love for her mother, all preserved. There's more, Catherine said. Your father's family in Boston, they want to meet you. You have grandparents, aunts, uncles, a whole family who thought you died with your mother. They thought we were dead. Your mother cut ties when she came west. They only learned recently that she'd survived the fire had you lived for years after. Catherine paused. They have money set aside, your father's inheritance. They want you to have it. Grace looked at the letters at this cousin who'd searched for her at the life that might have been. I have a family here. I'm not asking you to leave, just to know that you have more family than you realized. That you're not just Grace Morrison, frontier teacher. You're also Grace Sullivan, descended from Boston teachers and Irish immigrants and women who survived against all odds. That night, Grace shared the letters with Jake and Sarah. They read them together, these echoes of a love cut short by war. My dearest Catherine, one began. Today I taught the men their letters. It reminded me of teaching you French in your mother's garden, how you laughed when I pronounced things wrong. I dream of those laughs, of your smile, of the child we'll have when this war ends. He loved her deeply, Sarah said. And she loved him enough to never speak of him, Grace replied, to protect his memory from her sadness. Jake pulled her close. You could go to Boston, meet them. Would you come? Anywhere you want. The children should know all their own family. They made the trip that winter, the first time Grace had been east since her childhood journey west. Boston was overwhelming, buildings that touched the sky, more people than she'd ever seen, the ocean, stretching endless. Her father's parents were formal but kind, overwhelmed by this granddaughter they'd never known existed. They showed her pictures, her father as a child, a young man in uniform before the war. You have his eyes, her grandmother said, and his stubbornness, I'd guess. Mother said I was like him. Catherine was a good woman. We were wrong to oppose the marriage. The old woman touched Grace's face gently. But they loved each other. That's what matters. They stayed 2 weeks. The children played with cousins they'd never known. Jake charmed everyone with his reformed gunfighter stories, and Grace found pieces of herself she hadn't known were missing. But they returned to Wyoming, to their real home, carrying new connections but not new identities. You could have stayed, Sarah said when they returned. Been a Boston lady. I'm a Wyoming woman, Grace replied. That's harder and more honest. Emma returned 3 years later with a medical degree, a law certificate, and a fiancé, a young black doctor named Thomas Freeman, whom she'd met at a lecture on frontier medicine. Papa's going to have opinions, Sarah warned when Emma wrote of their engagement. Papa has opinions about everything, Emma replied. That's never stopped me before. The meeting was tense initially. Samuel had built an empire in a world that barely accepted Irish immigrants, let alone black professionals. But Thomas faced him without flinching. I love your granddaughter, he said simply. I respect her strength, admire her intelligence, and want to spend my life watching her change the world. And what about children? They'll face challenges. Every child faces challenges. Ours will face them with two parents who understand prejudice and overcome it daily. Emma stood beside him, proud and fierce. I chose him, Grandpa, just like you chosen to love me despite not knowing who my father was. Just like you chose to accept Grace despite her being a servant's daughter. Love is always a choice, and I choose Thomas. It was Sarah who broke the tension. When's the wedding? At next spring here at the school like Grace's. Samuel studied Thomas for a long moment, then extended his hand. Welcome to the family, son. God help you, the Blackwood women are formidable. That's why I love her, sir. The wedding was even grander than Grace's, with guests from Boston, Denver, and San Francisco. Thomas's family came from Philadelphia, educated, accomplished people who'd fought different battles than the Blackwoods, but with equal determination. Look at us, Grace told Sarah as they watched Emma dance with Thomas, the orphan and the hidden heiress, raising the next generation to be better than we were. Mother would be proud, Sarah said. Both our mothers. Dr. Hayes, now 80 and frail, had walked Emma down the aisle alongside Samuel. Two fathers, Emma had said, one of blood, one of choice, both essential. During the reception, Emma pulled Grace aside. I'm pregnant. Grace gasped, hugged her. Already. Thomas and I didn't want to wait. Life's too short, you taught me that. What will you name the baby? Catherine if it's a girl, for the woman who saved everything. Emma touched Grace's face. For your mother who made all of this possible. 6 months later, heavily pregnant and running the school while Sarah dealt with business in Denver, Emma faced an unexpected crisis. A group of men arrived claiming to be federal agents investigating the school's finances. Something felt wrong. Emma had inherited Sarah's instincts and Grace's courage. She sent a student to fetch Jake while stalling the men with paperwork. These records seem incomplete, the lead agent said. Perhaps you could specify what you're looking for. Emma replied calmly, though her hand rested on the drawer containing the revolver Grace had taught her to use. Records of payments to the Chen family. Proof of Sarah Blackwood's false identity. Emma's blood chilled. These weren't federal agents. I'm afraid I don't understand. Your mother is a fraud, the man snarled, dropping pretense. We have proof she's not really Sarah Blackwood. That Chinese whore has been playing you all for fools. Emma stood slowly, her pregnancy making her careful, but her rage making her dangerous. My mother survived an assassination attempt, lived in hiding for 12 years, and built this school from nothing. Call her a whore again, and federal agent or not, I'll shoot you myself. The man laughed. Pregnant girl playing with guns. Emma drew the revolver in one smooth motion. Grace had drilled her until it was muscle memory. This pregnant girl was taught by Jake Morrison. Want to test me? Jake arrived then with several men took in the scene instantly. Gentlemen, I think you should leave. We're federal agents. No, you're not. Jake's voice was deadly quiet. I know every federal man in 3 territories. You're syndicate remnants trying one last play. The confrontation escalated quickly. The fake agents pulled weapons, Jake's men responded, and Emma found herself shielding students while very pregnant and very angry. The gunfight was brief but vicious. 2 of the fake agents died, the rest fled. But Emma had been grazed by a bullet, sending her into early labor. Thomas, summoned from his rounds, arrived as his child was being born in the same room where Grace had recovered from frostbite 23 years earlier. It's a girl, Dr. Hayes announced, having delivered his own granddaughter with hands that shook only slightly. Perfect despite her dramatic entrance. Emma, exhausted but triumphant, held her daughter. Catherine Sarah Freeman, born fighting just like her namesakes. Sarah arrived 2 days later, having ridden through the night when she heard. She found Emma teaching from bed, the baby in a cradle beside her, students taking notes like nothing had happened. You were shot while pregnant, and you're teaching. Knowledge doesn't stop for bullets, Mama. Sarah looked at her daughter, scarred from the graze, radiant with new motherhood, fierce as any Blackwood who'd come before. I'm proud of you. I learned from the best, all of you. The attack on the school had been a probe. The real threat came a month later, a legal challenge to Emma's inheritance, Sarah's identity, and the school's existence. A man named Harrison Clark, claiming to be Vincent Morris's illegitimate son, had filed suit saying Sarah was an imposter and all Blackwood holdings should revert to the true heirs. It's absurd, Samuel raged. We have proof. They have a judge, Sarah said grimly. Judge Thornton, new appointment. Bought and paid for. The trial was set for Denver neutral ground. The entire family mobilized 23 years of evidence, witnesses, and documentation. But Clark had something they hadn't expected. A woman claiming to be the real Sarah Blackwood. She was the right age, scarred from fire, and knew details about the Blackwood family that seemed impossible for a stranger to know. She's been coached, Grace said immediately. Look at her eyes when she speaks. She's reciting, not remembering. But the judge seemed inclined to believe her. The trial was going badly until Emma, despite Thomas's protests about her health, took the stand. Your Honor, she said, I'd like to ask this woman one question. Proceed. Emma looked at the imposter. What song did Margaret Blackwood sing to Sarah when she couldn't sleep? The woman hesitated. A lullaby. Hush, little baby. Emma smiled. Wrong. My grandmother sang The Water is Wide, an old Irish ballad her mother had taught her. She sang it to my mother sang it to me, and I sing it to my daughter. That proves nothing. It proves everything. Emma turned to the judge. You want proof my mother is Sarah Blackwood? Fine. Ask her about the scar on her father's hand from when she accidentally cut him with garden shears at age 4. Ask her about the secret passage between the library and her bedroom that she used to sneak books. Ask her about the pony named Buttons who died when she was 7 and how she insisted on a full funeral. Sarah stood, then her voice carrying across the courtroom. Ask her about the night of the fire, how Catherine Sullivan smelled like lavender soap. Ask her how the flames sounded like screaming. Ask her about 12 years of nightmares of waking up sure you're burning again. Her voice broke. Ask her about choosing between revealing yourself and staying safe, between claiming your daughter and protecting her. Ask her what it's like to be dead to the world while watching your father grieve. Ask her about the weight of survival guilt that never leaves no matter how many years pass. The courtroom was silent. Then slowly witnesses began to stand. Master Chen, who'd hidden Sarah. The Chinese merchants who'd helped her escape. Tom Bradley, who'd kept her secret. Dr. Hayes, who'd saved her life. One by one they testified. Not just to Sarah's identity, but to the network of love and sacrifice that had kept her alive. By the end, even Judge Thornton couldn't deny the truth. Case dismissed, he said quietly, and Mr. Clark, you're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. As they led Clark away, the imposter Sarah broke down. He said my children would starve if I didn't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah approached her, gentle despite everything. What's your name? Your real name? Mary Watson. I'm nobody. Just a widow with 3 children and no way to feed them. Sarah looked at her father, at Grace, at Emma holding her baby. Then she turned back to Mary. You're not nobody. You're a mother trying to survive. I understand that. She pulled out a card. Come to the school. We'll find you work, real work. Your children can attend classes. You don't have to lie to live. Mary sobbed, clutching the card like a lifeline. Why would you help me? Because someone helped me once when I had nothing. Because mercy is stronger than justice. Because your children shouldn't pay for desperate choices made from hunger. As they left the courthouse, Samuel took his daughter's arm. You're more forgiving than I would be. I learned from the best, Papa. You forgave 12 years of deception. That was different. That was love. This is love too. Love for children will never meet for mothers desperate enough to lie for a world where no one has to choose between truth and survival. 25 years after Grace Sullivan saved a baby in a blizzard, she stood on the same platform where she'd once waited for a man who'd never come. But now, instead of emptiness, the platform was full of life. Emma's daughter, Catherine, called Kate, was departing for medical school, the 3rd generation of women to leave this platform for education. She had her great-grandmother's determination, her grandmother's cleverness, her mother's courage, and something uniquely her own, an unshakable belief that the world could be changed through intelligence and compassion. You have everything, Emma fussed now, 44, and the school's principal. Yes, Mama. Your grandfather's letters, grandmother Grace's locket, all of it. Tara, 66 now, her scars faded to silver lines, embraced her granddaughter. Remember who you are, not just a Blackwood, but a Sullivan, a Chen, a Freeman. You carry all our stories. I know, Grandmama, I'll make you proud. You already have. Grace, 57. Her red hair streaked with white, handed Kate a small package. From your great-great-grandmother, Catherine. Her journal. I've been saving it for when you are ready. Kate opened it reverently, reading the first entry. Today, I saved a life. A young girl burning in a fire not of her making. I lost my mother in the saving, but I would do it again. Some things are worth any price. Remember this, whoever reads these words. Love is not measured in safety, but in sacrifice. Truth is not always honesty, and lies can be the highest form of love. As the train pulled away, the women stood together, Sarah, Grace, Emma, and now Thomas and Jake Samuel, having passed 5 years before, peaceful in his bed, surrounded by the family he'd thought lost forever. She'll be fine, Thomas said. Better than fine, Grace replied. She'll be magnificent. They walked back through the town that had witnessed so much fire and revelation, violence and redemption, lies that saved and truths that healed. The Oriental Paradise still stood, now expanded into 3 buildings. The school had graduated over 200 women, each carrying forward the lessons learned in blood and choice. That night, Grace found Sarah in the garden tending the white roses that had never stopped growing wild. Do you ever regret it? Grace asked. The 12 years of hiding. No, those years made me who I am, made all of this possible. Sarah touched a bloom perfect, despite the thorns. Your mother gave me a gift greater than life. She gave me the chance to choose who I would become. And who did you become? Sarah smiled, and in that moment, Grace could see every version of her, the scared girl who jumped from a burning window, Maggie Chen serving tea with hidden strength, the woman who'd faced down her would-be killers, the mother who'd raised a revolution disguised as a school. I became myself, all of myself, the parts that survived and the parts that were reborn, the lies that protected and the truths that freed. She looked at Grace. Just like you became yourself, not the orphan or the savior, but Grace Morrison, teacher, mother, keeper of stories. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 women bound by a tragedy that had become triumph, a lie that had become the deepest truth. In the distance, a train whistle echoed another departure, another arrival, another story beginning. The white roses bloomed on wild and untamed, growing over and through everything, proof that beauty could rise from ashes, that love could grow from deception, that sometimes the best families were the ones chosen in desperation and forged in fire. The last entry in Sarah's journal, found years later by Kate's daughter. We are all stories in the end. Some of us are written by our own hands, some by the hands of others. I was written into being by a girl who chose my life over her mother's, rewritten by merchants who chose mercy over safety, and finally wrote myself into the woman I became. The letters that brought Grace here were lies that told the truth, promises that were broken and kept in equal measure. I would not change a word of it. Today marks 50 years since the fire that should have killed me. Instead, it birthed a legacy of women who refused to be contained by others' expectations. The Oriental Paradise Academy has branches in 5 states now. Emma's medical practice serves whoever needs her help, regardless of ability to pay. Grace's children are teachers, doctors, writers, spreading the gospel of chosen family and earned a redemption. The white roses still grow wild. I still won't cut them back. Let them overtake everything. Let them be proof that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the deepest deceptions, that love can bloom in the hardest soil, that families can be built from the broken pieces of other families. Let them grow. Let it all grow wild.